Imagine, for a moment, a vast cosmic river, with no beginning and no end. This river does not carry water, but life itself, shimmering and flowing through infinite space and time. Each of us, every single consciousness, is a tiny drop of water in that great river. On this endless journey, your drop of water is constantly moving, colliding, merging with, and then separating from countless other drops. Some encounters are gentle, like two warm currents blending into one, creating a feeling of familiarity and peace. Other encounters are like a violent whirlpool, pulling you into chaos, dashing you against the sharp rocks of pain and confusion. And there are innumerable other drops that simply pass by, touching you for a moment before dissolving back into the immense flow. In our hurried lives, we often look back on our relationships and feel they are random, a chaotic series of events with no rules. We ache for those who have left, we cling desperately to those who give us a sense of security, and we feel anger and resentment toward those who have hurt us. We lie awake at night, our minds endlessly asking unanswerable questions. Why did they treat me that way? Why did that beautiful encounter have to end? Why did I have to meet this person at this time? We feel like a solitary leaf swept away in a storm, with no control, no compass to guide us. This anxiety and sense of being stuck arise from this very perspective, the view that life is a meaningless series of disconnected events. But what if there were another lens through which to see all of this? A lens polished over thousands of years by ancient wisdom, a lens that can transform the chaos into a purposeful dance. The wisdom of Zen Buddhism gently invites us to try seeing that no one, absolutely no one, enters your life by chance. Every person, from the one you love most to the one who hurt you most deeply, from the respected teacher to the stranger you meet only once, all of them are messengers. They carry messages, lessons sent by the universe specifically for you, designed perfectly for your own spiritual growth. They come to show you where you are still weak, where you need to learn to let go, and where your love needs to blossom. This is the starting point for a new journey. A journey not to change the world outside, but to understand the messages the world is constantly sending us. To begin this journey of understanding, we must first look together at one of the most foundational and profound truths that ancient wisdom has pointed to, and a truth with the power to completely change how we see ourselves and our relationships. This is the teaching of the Great Web of Interbeing, or Pratitya Samutpada in Sanskrit. The name may sound complex, but its core meaning is incredibly simple and intimate. It simply means that no thing, no phenomenon, no person can exist independently on its own. Everything in this universe interexists, relying on everything else for its presence. Look at the flower in front of you, or imagine one in your mind. We call it a flower, but if we look deeply, we will see that the flower is made of countless non-flower elements. We see the sunshine within it. Without the sun, the flower cannot photosynthesize. We see the cloud within it. Without the cloud and the rain, the flower would wither. We see the soil, the farmer who planted it, and the nutrients that nourished it. If we were to remove the sunshine, the cloud, the earth, and the farmer, would the flower still exist? The answer is no. Thus, the flower is actually a temporary manifestation of the entire universe. Its nature is interbeing. It is because all other things are. Now, let's apply that insight to ourselves. We often carry a deep, unconscious belief that there is a separate me, an independent entity located somewhere inside this body, thinking and feeling. But what is that me really? Look at your hand. Where did this hand come from? It came from your father and your mother. Your parents, in turn, came from your grandparents. That lineage continues endlessly. This hand is nourished by the food you eat every day. That food comes from farmers, from the earth, from the rain, from the sun. The breath you are gently inhaling and exhaling right now, where does it come from? It comes from the atmosphere, from distant forests diligently creating oxygen. So then, your parents, your ancestors, the farmers, the sun, the air, the forests are all present within you in this very moment. You are not a separate entity. You are a point of convergence, a wondrous manifestation of the entire web of life. When we understand this, the feeling of loneliness and separation we so often carry begins to dissolve. How can we be lonely when the entire universe is within us and we are within the universe? To illustrate this magnificent idea, Mahayana Buddhist scriptures use a powerful and splendid image. The image of Indra's net. Imagine for a moment you are in the celestial palace of the god Indra. There, a colossal net is cast out, stretching infinitely in all directions, up, down, left and right. At every single node where the threads of the net intersect, a jewel is hung. This is no ordinary jewel. It is perfectly polished, as clear as crystal, with countless facets. And the most wondrous thing is, if you look into the surface of any single jewel, you will see the reflection of all the other jewels in the entire net. Everything is reflected in one. But the story doesn't stop there, because each reflected jewel is also, itself, reflecting all the other jewels. So, within the reflection of each jewel, you see the reflection of the entire net once more, and so on, repeating into infinity. Not a single jewel exists alone. Its existence and its beauty come from reflecting and being reflected by all the others. Whatever happens to one jewel, whether a speck of dust lands on it or a ray of light illuminates it, is immediately reflected in all the rest. Now, let us see each of us, every person, every living being, as a jewel in that great net of Indra. When you meet someone, it is not an encounter between two separate entities, two isolated jewels. It is a moment where the entire net of causes and conditions is manifesting itself through those 2 points of convergence. The person standing before you is reflecting you, and you are reflecting them. Their joys, sorrows, anger, or love are, in some way, reflecting corresponding aspects within your own consciousness. And your actions toward them, a word, a glance, a silent thought, are like a ray of light or a speck of dust touching your jewel. It doesn't just stay there. It immediately creates ripples, reflections that spread throughout the entire net. A kind word you speak to a cashier might brighten their day. With that positive energy, they may go home and be more patient with their children. That child, feeling loved, might share a toy with a friend tomorrow. The circle of kindness expands invisibly. Similarly, an act of anger, a harsh judgment, also creates its own ripples, spreading negativity and suffering everywhere in ways we can never fully comprehend. Understanding interbeing is not a dry philosophical exercise. It is a healing practice. It breaks down the illusory wall of the ego, the wall that has imprisoned us in isolation and fear. When you look at someone you dislike, try to remember that they too are a jewel in the net, also reflecting and being reflected, also made of countless non-them elements, also carrying suffering passed down from their ancestors and society, just like you. When you are with someone you love, remember that this relationship is not the private possession of two people, but a beautiful expression of the entire net, a dance of conditions to be cherished in every moment. This insight helps us develop compassion and humility. We realize we are not the center of the universe, but an inseparable part of a great and living whole. The feeling of loneliness is just a misunderstanding, a temporary forgetting of our deep, intrinsic connection. You never were, and never will be, truly alone. But if we are all jewels connected in an infinite net, what is it that determines which specific connections manifest in our lives? What is the unseen force that pulls certain threads together, that makes specific jewels shine upon each other at a particular time? What governs the patterns within this dance? That force, that law of cause and effect that echoes through the web, is what the ancients called karma. Once we see ourselves as part of the great web of interbeing, a natural question arises. What weaves the patterns on that net? What causes specific encounters to happen, bringing with them different feelings of joy and sorrow, love and hate? The answer lies in one of the most universal and powerful laws of the cosmos, a law often deeply misunderstood in the modern world. This is the law of karma. When we hear the word karma, the minds of many of us might immediately associate it with a system of divine reward and punishment, a predetermined fate, or an invisible debt to be paid. We think of karma as a judge in the sky, passing judgment on our actions and then deciding to grant blessings or inflict calamities. But this view misses the beauty and liberating truth of the original teaching. In its original language, karma simply means action, nothing more, nothing less. It is not punishment, but a natural law of cause and effect, as neutral and precise as the law of gravity. If you release an object, it will fall. That is not a punishment. It is the nature of things. Similarly, karma is the law that states every intentional action will produce a corresponding result. This action is expressed through three doors: through the body, through speech, and through the mind. Body karma consists of the physical actions we perform, from a comforting embrace to an act of violence. Speech karma consists of the words we speak, from a healing, kind word to a hurtful criticism. And most importantly, the foundation for both is mind karma, the thoughts, the intentions, the mental currents that operate in our minds. This is the very root of karma. An act of helping someone done with the intention of being rewarded will plant a very different seed than the same act done with a pure heart, simply wishing for the other person to be free from suffering. It is the intention behind the action that truly imbues energy into the karmic seed we plant. To understand this better, let us imagine that the consciousness of each of us is a vast, fertile field, which we can call the field of consciousness. This field has a magical quality. It registers everything. Every thought you give rise to, every word you speak, every deed you do, is like a seed being sown into this field. If you sow seeds of anger, jealousy, greed, and judgment, they will silently germinate in the soil of your consciousness. Over time, they will grow into thorny plants, into toxic weeds. They will make your field barren, and your inner garden will be filled with darkness and suffering. Conversely, if you intentionally plant seeds of kindness, tolerance, patience, and compassion, they too will germinate. They will grow into sweet fruits and fragrant flowers. They will turn your inner garden into a peaceful sanctuary, a paradise of ease and freshness. And here is the direct link to the people we meet in our lives. The people and circumstances that come to us are often the harvest, the fruits that have ripened from the seeds we have sown in the past. When a person comes and brings you joy, support, and love, it may be the sweet fruit of a seed of kindness you planted long ago. Perhaps in an act you have already forgotten. When a person appears and causes you frustration, pain, and sorrow, it may be the bitter fruit of a seed of anger or criticism that you yourself sowed in your own or another's field of consciousness. They appear not to punish you. They appear as a messenger from your own inner garden. They come to let you taste the fruit that your seed has produced, and to silently ask you, "This is the taste of anger. This is the taste of judgment. Do you want to continue planting these seeds?" This is an extremely important point and needs to be understood with great subtlety. The law of karma does not mean that those who are suffering deserve it in a blaming or judgmental way. A child who is abused does not deserve it. That view is cruel and wrong. Instead, let us see the experience of suffering as a message, a signal. When you touch a fire and feel a burning sensation, that feeling is not a punishment. It is a protective signal, a direct and powerful lesson from your body saying, "Do not touch fire again." Similarly, when negative karma ripens into a painful relationship, it is a signal from the universe, from your own consciousness saying, "This path of anger, of division, of selfishness leads only to suffering. It is time to find another path." This transforms us from the position of a passive victim into an active student. It gives us the power to look at our most difficult experiences and ask, "What is the lesson here? What seed within me contributed to this situation? And what new seed can I plant right now to change the future harvest?" And that is the most liberating and hopeful aspect of the teaching on karma. We are not prisoners of the past. Although we cannot avoid reaping the ripened fruits of seeds already sown, in this very present moment, we are always the farmer standing on our own field. Your hands are holding new seeds. You have complete freedom to choose. Right now, you can choose to plant a seed of forgiveness instead of resentment. You can choose to plant a seed of listening instead of judgment. You can choose to plant a seed of empathy instead of criticism. Every small choice in the present is an act of creating your own future, of weaving new patterns on the great web of interbeing. As we observe our garden, watching the harvests come and go, we begin to notice something else profound. The sweet fruit does not last forever, and the bitter fruit also eventually passes away. The people who bring us happiness may change or leave. The people who cause us pain will not be there forever. The nature of relationships, of feelings, of all circumstances that karma brings, is always changing, always flowing. This recognition brings us face to face with the next great truth on the path of understanding, the universal law of impermanence. As we observe the sweet and bitter fruits from the karmic seeds we have sown, we cannot help but notice a common characteristic. No fruit lasts forever. The joy of a good relationship can fade. The sorrow from a loss will also eventually soften. People change, circumstances shift, and we ourselves are constantly transforming in every moment. This truth leads us to one of the hallmarks of existence, a law that encompasses all things in the universe. This is impermanence, or anicca. Impermanence means that everything is in a constant state of flux, just like a river. You cannot step into the same river twice, because both you and the river have already changed. The water from the previous moment has flowed out to sea, and the cells in your body have also died and been replaced. Life, relationships, and our very own minds are also such a river. The person you met yesterday is not entirely the same as the person you meet today. Your thoughts and feelings also come and go like clouds in the sky, never holding the same shape. At first, the truth of impermanence can bring a sense of unease, even fear. We are creatures who crave stability and security. We want to build strong castles on the foundation of happiness. When we have a happy moment, we want to freeze it, to keep it forever. When we love someone, we want them to never change. We want their feelings for us to remain as passionate as they were at the beginning. We try to build dams to stop the river of life, hoping to keep a still and peaceful lake for ourselves. But this resistance, this act of clinging and attaching to a fixed state, is the true source of suffering. Suffering does not come from change itself. Suffering comes from our wish for things not to change. It is like trying to hold water in your fist. The tighter you squeeze, the faster the water escapes, and in the end, your hand is empty, left with only a feeling of regret and powerlessness. Trying to keep a relationship from changing is like building a house on a frozen river. In the winter, it may stand firm, but when spring comes, the ice will melt, and your house will surely collapse. In the treasure trove of Buddhist stories, there is a deeply moving and profound tale that illustrates this lesson. It is the story of a woman named Kisa Gotami. She lived a happy life with her husband and had a firstborn son, whom she loved more than her own life. But then tragedy struck. Her beloved child suddenly died from an illness. Overwhelmed with grief and unable to accept the truth, Kisa Gotami carried her son's body through the village, knocking on every door to ask for medicine. People looked at her with pity, telling her that her son was already dead, that no medicine could save him. But she didn't believe them. She thought they just didn't have good enough medicine. In her desperation, someone directed her to the Buddha, saying he was a great physician who might have the cure she was looking for. Kisa Gotami was overjoyed and rushed to the monastery with her child. When she met the Buddha, she laid the child down and begged him for medicine. The Buddha, with his infinite compassion, did not dismiss her plea. Instead, he said, "I can heal your son, but I need a special ingredient. Go into the village, to any house you like, and bring me a mustard seed. But there is one condition. That mustard seed must come from a house where no one has ever died." With a glimmer of hope, Kisa Gotami immediately ran into the village. She knocked on the first door and asked for a mustard seed. The homeowner was willing to give her one, but when she asked if anyone in the house had ever died, they replied sadly, "Oh, why do you remind us? We have lost more loved ones than we can count." She thanked them and went to the second house, then the third, the fourth. The story was exactly the same. "My husband died last year. My mother just passed away last month. We lost our little boy." She went from one end of the village to the other, knocking on dozens, hundreds of doors, but not a single place could give her the mustard seed she needed. The sun began to set, and Kisa Gotami collapsed by the side of the road, exhausted and empty. Looking at the village lights being lit and then extinguished, she realized a truth. The pain she was carrying, the pain of losing her child, was not hers alone. It was a part of being human. Death was not a freak accident that happened to her family. It was a universal law for all. In that moment, the selfishness in her grief dissolved. Her personal pain of "my son is dead" was transformed into a universal understanding that all living beings must die. She gently laid her son's body down and returned to the Buddha. But this time, she did not come to ask for medicine, but to ask to be shown the path of enlightenment. Kisa Gotami's story shows us that accepting impermanence is not a pessimistic resignation. On the contrary, it is a gateway to profound freedom and peace. When we truly understand and accept that everything changes, we stop wasting energy resisting the flow of life. Instead, we learn to appreciate the present moment more fully. We love someone not because we expect them to be with us forever, but because we know that this moment is precious and will never be repeated. Impermanence is not loss, it is constant renewal. It is because of impermanence that a person who makes a mistake today can become better tomorrow. It is because of impermanence that sadness cannot last forever, and new joy always has a chance to arise. It is the engine of healing, of forgiveness, and of growth. It frees us from the burden of the past and anxiety about the future, and invites us to live fully right here, in this very moment. So how do we practice living with impermanence in our relationships? It is by learning to love without clinging. Be a companion on the river, rowing alongside another person for a stretch, enjoying the scenery on both banks, but always being ready for them to turn into a different tributary when the time comes. Allow your emotions to come and go naturally, observing them as you would observe the clouds, without needing to hold on or push away. When we practice like this, a strange and profound peace will permeate our soul, and as we sit by the river of impermanence, quietly observing everything flow by relationships, feelings, thoughts, and even this very body, a deeper question arises. If all of these things are a constantly changing river, then who is the one standing on the riverbank watching it all? What is this I that experiences this impermanence? If my thoughts change, my feelings change, my body changes, where can I find a permanent, solid self? This profound inquiry leads us directly into the heart of one of Buddhism's most liberating insights, the truth of anatta, or no self. Having contemplated the river of impermanence, seeing that everything from our bodies and feelings to our relationships is in constant flux, an essential question arises. What then? Is the I that is experiencing all of this? We have an almost innate belief, a certain feeling that there is a me here, a master, a core entity sitting behind these eyes, hearing these sounds, and thinking these thoughts. I am happy, I am sad, I was hurt, I am in love. This sense of a separate, solid, and continuous self is the most fundamental lens through which we view our entire lives. But the teaching of no self, or anatta, invites us to courageously question this very foundational belief. It does not say you do not exist. That would be absurd. You are here, breathing, listening. Instead, it says, what you think you are, the solid I you've always believed to be real, cannot actually be found. It is an illusion, a subtle but incredibly powerful misidentification. To understand this, Buddhism analyzes the person we call I into 5 groups of components, called the 5 aggregates, or skandhas. Let us conduct a small investigation together. The first is the aggregate of form, which is this physical body. Is this body me? We have already seen that it is impermanent, ever-changing, and composed of countless non-us elements like food, air, and water. It will age, get sick, and eventually disintegrate. Something so changing and fragile cannot be a true, unchanging I. So perhaps the I is in the mind? Let's consider the second aggregate, feeling. These are our sensations, the raw feelings that arise when our senses make contact with the external world. There are 3 main types: pleasant feelings, unpleasant feelings, and neutral feelings. Are feelings me? Clearly not. They come and go like the wind. One moment you feel pleasant, and a single word can make you feel unpleasant instantly. They are too fleeting and unreliable to be considered a stable self. The third aggregate is perception. This is the ability to recognize, name, and label things. When your eye sees a green object with leaves, your mind applies the label tree. When your ear hears a melodious sound, you apply the label nice music. When an unpleasant feeling arises, you label it sadness. Are these labels, these concepts, me? They also change constantly depending on your experience and education. A person who has never seen snow will not have the concept of snow in their mind. These notions are also not a fixed self. The fourth aggregate, a very important one, is mental formations. This includes all our tendencies, habits, conditioned responses, prejudices, desires, aversions, and all our psychological constructs. This is where karmic seeds are stored. Anger, greed, patience, compassion belong to the aggregate of mental formations. Are they me? They are also just mental programs, habits formed over time that can be changed through practice. They are not our inherent nature. Finally, the fifth aggregate is consciousness. This is the capacity for awareness, the simple knowing. It is like an empty screen on which the movie of experience form, feeling, perception, and mental formations is projected. It is the knowing when the eye is seeing, the ear is hearing, the mind is thinking. But this consciousness also depends on its objects to exist. Without an object to be known, the knowing does not arise. It, too, is impermanent. So, after searching through all 5 groups of elements that make up a person, we cannot find any I at all. The I is not in the body, not in feelings, not in perceptions, not in mental formations, and not in consciousness. So where's the I? To answer this question, there is a classic story about the dialogue between the monk Nagasena and King Milinda. King Milinda, a wise king, asked the monk, "Venerable sir, what is your name?" The monk replied, "Your Majesty, I am called Nagasena. But that is only a name, a designation. There is no permanent entity here." The king was greatly surprised and challenged him. "If there is no real Nagasena, then who is wearing the robes, who is eating, who is practicing?" The monk Nagasena did not answer directly. Instead, he asked the king a question, pointing to the king's luxurious chariot. "Your Majesty, how did you arrive here?" The king replied, "By chariot." The monk then asked, "So, what is a chariot? Is the pole the chariot? Of course not. Are the wheels the chariot? Also no. Are the yoke, the reins, or the frame the chariot?" The king answered no to each part. The monk continued, "Then are all the parts together the chariot?" The king thought and replied, "Not really. They are just a collection of parts. So is there something outside of these parts that is the chariot?" The king replied, "There is not." At this point, the monk Nagasena smiled and said, "Your Majesty, it is just the same. Chariot is only a name, a convenient designation we apply to a combination of many parts. When these parts are assembled in a certain way, we call it a chariot. When they are taken apart, the designation chariot no longer has meaning." Similarly, Nagasena or I is just a convenient designation we apply to the temporary combination of the 5 aggregates: body, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. There is no charioteer, no master, sitting inside this machine. This understanding has a profoundly liberating impact on our relationships. Think about this. Most conflicts, most arguments, most hurts between people arise from our attempt to defend an I that does not exist. Someone says a critical word, and I feel attacked. Someone doesn't do what I want, and I feel angry. I want to be recognized. I want to be loved. I am afraid of being abandoned. We are fighting a tiring battle to protect a ghost. When you realize there is no solid self to defend, the words of others lose their power to harm you. They are like an arrow shot into empty space, with no target to hit. The sensitivity, the vulnerability of the ego automatically deflates, bringing an extraordinary sense of peace and stability. Moreover, when you look at another person through the lens of no self, your compassion arises naturally. You no longer see an evil enemy, a hateful person. Instead, you see another flowing process of the 5 aggregates, just like you. You see their mental formations, their negative habits, their fears and ignorance controlling their actions, causing them to say and do things that create suffering for themselves and others. Instead of anger, a deep empathy arises. Ah, this person is also trapped in the illusion of self, also suffering from their own mental habits, also clumsily searching for happiness. This seeing is the very foundation of true, non-judgmental compassion. Having built this solid foundation, understanding the interconnected web of interbeing, the law of karma, the flowing river of impermanence, and the liberating truth of no self, we are now equipped with the tools we need. With this new light, let us turn our attention to the most challenging messengers life sends us, the ones who test our practice to its limits. The people we call our enemies. Having understood that we are part of an interconnected web of interbeing, that our actions create results through karma, that everything flows in the river of impermanence, and that there is no solid self to defend through the truth of no self, then our perception of an enemy cannot possibly remain the same. By instinct, we want to avoid, fight, or hate those who hurt us. We see them as obstacles on our path to happiness. But the spiritual path often follows a counterintuitive logic. It teaches us that the most bitter medicine can often cure the most serious diseases. And in the alchemy of transforming the mind, the person we call an enemy can become our greatest and most unexpected teacher. A teacher we perhaps need more than any other. Consider this. Our friends and loved ones tend to tell us what we want to hear. Out of affection, they may overlook our flaws and weaknesses to maintain harmony. They are like a mirror polished with a soft cloth, reflecting only pleasant images. But a person who dislikes us, a person who criticizes us, is like a different kind of mirror, an unflattering and somewhat ruthless one. Their words and actions, though they may stem from malice, often accurately illuminate the hidden corners of ourselves that we don't want to see. Our arrogance, our insecurities, our deep-seated attachments. They point out exactly where our ego is being hurt, how weakly it is reacting. If we have the courage not to be swept away by the initial feeling of anger, but to take a step back and ask ourselves, in this criticism, however poorly it was delivered, is there even 1% of truth? Is it pointing out something about myself that I need to re-examine? Then in that moment, that person is no longer an enemy. They have become a free diagnostician, a difficult but effective advisor, helping us to see the tumors of the ego before they become cancerous. Furthermore, these people are the whetstone for our practice. Patience and compassion cannot be cultivated in an environment of only pleasant things. Anyone can be patient with someone who treats them well. Anyone can be compassionate to a kitten. But true patience, Kanti Parami, one of the supreme qualities leading to enlightenment, can only be honed when we are faced with provocation, injustice, and criticism. A sword does not become sharp by cutting butter. It must be ground again and again on a coarse, abrasive stone. The people who annoy us are that whetstone. Every harsh word, every unjust action from them is another grind on the blade of our consciousness. If we react with anger, we only cause both of us to be hurt by the flying sparks. But if we can keep our minds stable, take a breath, and observe our anger without acting on it, then in that very moment, our patience is growing stronger. Without these whetstones, our spiritual qualities would remain theoretical, dull, and weak. The story of the Zen master Hakuin in Japan is a powerful testament to this strength. The master was a highly respected teacher, living a pure life in his temple. Near the temple lived a family who ran a food shop. One day, their daughter was discovered to be pregnant. Her parents were furious and demanded to know who the father was. Under immense pressure to protect her lover, the girl blurted out that it was the Zen master Hakuin. Her parents flew into a rage, stormed to the temple, and berated the master in front of his disciples and the villagers. From a revered teacher, Hakuin's reputation was destroyed overnight. He was scorned and shunned by everyone. In response to the father's furious accusation, the master simply replied with a single phrase, "Is that so?" When the child was born, they brought it to the temple and thrust it into his arms. He accepted the baby and quietly cared for it. He begged for milk from the neighbors, enduring all the gossip and contemptuous looks, yet he treated the child with all gentleness and love. He lived like this for over a year. Then one day, the young mother, tormented by guilt, could bear it no longer and confessed the truth to her parents. The real father was a young man who worked at the fish market. Her entire family was horrified and rushed to the temple, bowing and apologizing profusely to the master. They asked to have the child back. Zen Master Hakuin, while handing back the plump, healthy baby, also just smiled and said the exact same phrase as before. Is that so? His mind was not swayed by praise, just as it had not been swayed by blame. His peace came from a place that fame and infamy could not touch. He had used the ultimate injustice to practice patience and know self at the highest level. This story teaches us that, when faced with an enemy, if we look deeper, we will see their suffering. A person who is always angry, critical, or trying to harm others is, themselves, living in a hell. The fire of their hatred is burning them more than anyone else. They act from ignorance, from their own fears and deep wounds. When we see this with the eyes of no self and interbeing, our anger automatically subsides and a sense of compassion arises. We no longer see a villain, but a suffering being. And this is the final, most radical step in the practice. To silently feel gratitude for them. Not gratitude for the pain they cause, but gratitude for the precious opportunity they provide. They have come, like a bodhisattva in disguise, to help us see our own ego, to hone our patience, to awaken our compassion, and to accelerate us on the path of liberation in the most powerful way. Without them, we would remain complacent in our comfort zones. It is they, these unexpected teachers, who have given us the chance to turn mud into a lotus, to transform poison into nectar. However, to be able to face someone who hurts us with such wisdom and an open heart, we need an immense inner resource. It is not something we can fake or force. That strength, that warmth, must be intentionally cultivated. It must be born from the practice of making our own hearts soft and warm, from developing a boundless goodwill toward all beings, starting with ourselves. This practice has a beautiful name. It is the practice of metta, or loving kindness. To be able to look at an enemy and see a teacher. To be able to endure injustice without a resentful heart like Zen Master Hakuin, we need an inner source of energy, a warmth that can warm both ourselves and others. We cannot face ice with a heart that is also cold. We must light a fire within ourselves. That fire, in the Buddhist tradition, is called metta, or loving kindness. Metta is often translated as loving kindness or benevolence, but its meaning is deeper than that. It is not the romantic, possessive, or conditional love we often see. Metta is a pure and unconditional friendliness, a sincere wish for all living beings to be safe and happy, without distinction, without judgment. It is not a spontaneous emotion, but a quality of the heart, a skill that can be learned and intentionally cultivated, much like learning to play a musical instrument. Metta is the antidote to fear, anger, and the feeling of isolation. It is the cool water that extinguishes the fire of hatred burning us from within. And the journey of cultivating loving kindness always begins in the closest, but often most difficult, place, ourselves. We cannot give what we do not have. We cannot pour from an empty cup. If we do not know how to be loving and kind to ourselves, how can we truly be loving and kind to others? So many of us carry a harsh inner critic, always judging, finding fault, and never satisfied with ourselves. We feel we are not good enough, not worthy of happiness. Therefore, the first and most crucial step is to turn inward and use the energy of metta to warm our own inner garden. Now, let us practice a little together. Sit in a comfortable position, closing your eyes if you wish. Bring your attention to your breath, feeling the air move in and out gently. Then, silently repeat the following phrases in your mind, directed toward yourself. Read them slowly, allowing the meaning of each phrase to soak into every cell of your body. May I be peaceful. May I be happy. May I be free from suffering and affliction. May my body be healthy. May my mind be at ease. At first, you may feel a bit awkward, even artificial. Perhaps the inner critic will say, "How selfish. Why pray for myself first?" Just smile at that voice and patiently continue. You are not being selfish. You are filling your cup so that you can share with others. Imagine these words are like warm sunbeams, slowly melting the ice of self-judgment and shame that has accumulated in your heart for so long. Practice this every day, even for just a few minutes. Gradually, you will feel a change. Your heart will become softer, and you will learn to be a friend to yourself. Once you have felt a little warmth and peace from practicing for yourself, It is time to extend the embrace of loving kindness outward. Begin with someone you love and respect, someone for whom it is easy to feel kindness. It could be a teacher, a close friend, a parent, or even a pet. Imagine that person sitting in front of you, smiling at you. Then, send them your best wishes. May you be peaceful. May you be happy. May you be healthy and free from harm. May you live a life of ease. Truly feel the warmth and goodwill flowing from your heart toward them. After practicing with a loved one, the next step is to direct loving kindness to a neutral person. This is someone you see regularly but have no strong feelings about, neither love nor hate, such as a cashier, a bus driver, or a neighbor you rarely speak to. Normally, we see them as shadows, not really as human beings. Now, bring that person to mind, and also send them the same blessings. May they be peaceful. May they also be happy. This exercise helps us to break through our indifference and to recognize that every person we meet has their own life, their own joys and sorrows, and a deep longing for happiness, just like us. And finally, when your heart has become stronger, comes the most challenging step. Sending loving kindness to a difficult person, someone you dislike, or even an enemy. Start with someone who is only mildly irritating, not your worst adversary. Bring them to mind. It is certain that your mind will resist. But remember the core lesson. Metta does not mean you have to like them, nor does it mean you condone their harmful actions. Metta is a recognition of our shared humanity. It is the recognition that this person, just like me, is also seeking happiness and trying to avoid suffering. It's just that their way of seeking happiness may be very clumsy, based on ignorance, and cause suffering for others. When you realize this, courageously send them your blessings, not for their sake, but for your own, to free your heart from the prison of resentment. May they be peaceful. May they find true happiness. May they also be free from suffering. This is an incredibly powerful act. It begins to dissolve the knot of hatred within you. To illustrate the boundless quality of loving kindness, think of the sun. Every morning when the sun rises, it bestows its light and warmth generously and without discrimination. The sunlight shines on a fragrant rose garden, and it also shines on a foul-smelling garbage dump. The sunlight warms a saint in meditation, and it also warms a thief hiding in the shadows. The sun never judges. Oh, this rose garden is beautiful. I will give it more light. That garbage dump is filthy. I will not give it any light. The sun simply shines. Its nature is to give warmth. Our practice of loving kindness is just like that. It is to cultivate a heart that can radiate warmth and goodwill in all directions, to all beings, from the smallest insect to the people we love, and even to those we dislike. It is a love without enemies, without borders. When your heart is filled with the warm light of metta, with the unconditional wish for all to be happy, something magical happens. When you encounter a being who is actually in pain, who is clearly suffering, the warmth of metta, upon touching that suffering, naturally transforms. It is no longer just a wish. It becomes an active urge to alleviate that suffering. This new expression of the heart, born from metta when faced with pain, is called karuna or compassion. When our heart has been irrigated with the energy of loving kindness, with the sincere wish for all beings to be happy, it can no longer remain callous to the pain of the world. When we walk through life with an open heart, we cannot help but see the suffering and affliction that exist everywhere. We see it in the eyes of a stranger, hear it in the voice of a friend, and feel it in the hidden corners of our own soul. And when the warmth of loving kindness touches real suffering, it naturally transforms. It is no longer a simple wish for peace, but becomes a deep vibration, a powerful urge to do something to soothe, to heal, to alleviate the pain and sorrow. This dynamic and engaged expression of love is called karuna, or compassion. If loving kindness is the sunlight, then compassion is the warmth of that light actively melting the ice. The first and most important thing we need to understand is that compassion is completely different from pity. Pity often comes from a place of superiority, a position of separation. When we pity someone, we are implicitly saying, "Oh, you poor thing. I'm glad I'm not in your situation." Pity creates a distance between me, the strong one, and them, the weak one. It can feel condescending and make the person who is suffering feel even smaller. But compassion is the opposite. It is born from a recognition of our shared humanity, from a deep sense of equality. It does not say poor you, but rather I see your suffering, and I recognize the seed of that suffering within myself. Your pain touches my pain. Compassion is the ability to suffer with. It breaks down the wall between self and other and creates a sincere connection from heart to heart. It is a trembling of our entire being in the face of another's pain. So, how can we feel compassion even for those who have hurt us? How can we empathize with someone whose actions have caused so much trouble? The answer lies in the practice of looking deeply. Instead of just looking at the action on the surface, we must use the light of mindfulness and wisdom to illuminate the deep-seated roots that created that action. When we look deeply at a person who is angry, who is speaking harsh words, we will not only see their aggression, we will see the powerlessness behind it. We will see the unhealed wounds of their past, the unspoken fears, and the ignorance that is driving them. A person who is truly happy and peaceful has no need to hurt others. Harmful words and actions are often just the distorted cries of a suffering soul. When we see this, not with our intellect, but with the feeling of our heart, our anger will automatically subside. It will be replaced by a sad empathy, an understanding that this person is also a victim of the afflictions in their own mind. This seeing does not mean we condone the wrongful act, but it completely changes our inner attitude, frees us from the venom of resentment, and opens the door to healing. The foundation for developing compassion for others is the ability to practice compassion for ourselves. Ask yourself, when you fail, when you make a mistake, when you feel pain, how do you treat yourself? Do you use harsh words, berating and criticizing yourself? Or can you offer yourself the same gentleness and forgiveness you would willingly offer a dear friend in difficulty? Self-compassion is the ability to embrace our own imperfections, failures, and pain with a warm and non-judgmental heart. You can practice this by telling yourself in difficult times, "This is a moment of suffering. Suffering is an unavoidable part of life. May I be kind to myself in this moment. May I allow myself to be vulnerable and imperfect." When you learn to be a gentle companion to yourself, you will have infinite empathy to share with others. One of the most powerful ways to practice compassion in relationships is the art of deep listening. Deep listening is not just being silent so the other person can speak. It is offering them the gift of your full attention. It is listening not to judge, not to prepare a reply, but simply to understand. Listening to what is said, and also to what is not said. Listening for the pain behind the angry words, for the loneliness within the boasting. When you can give someone the gift of your deep listening, you are giving them a safe space where they can heal themselves. This simple act has the power to resolve conflict and heal emotional wounds more powerfully than any advice or argument. To symbolize the boundless power of compassion, the image of the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara in Mahayana Buddhism is a great source of inspiration. It is said that when he looked down upon the world and witnessed the endless suffering of living beings, his heart broke with such immense compassion that his body shattered into 1,000 pieces. The Buddhas, moved by his great vow, reassembled his body with 1,000 arms, and in the palm of each hand was an eye. The 1,000 eyes are to see all forms of suffering in the universe, no matter how small or hidden. The 1,000 hands are to reach out, in countless skillful ways, to support, protect, and soothe that suffering. Avalokiteshvara is not a god in the sky. He is the embodiment of the potential for compassion within each of us. Every time we act from an empathetic heart, when we extend a hand to help a suffering being, when we listen with our full attention, our 2 hands also become part of the 1,000 hands of the Bodhisattva. Compassion is the heart's response to suffering, born from the warmth of loving kindness. It is a fire that not only warms but also has the ability to illuminate and to heal. It transforms those who hurt us into objects of empathy and turns our own pain into the soil for growth. After exploring these methods for dealing with the difficult messengers in our lives, let us now turn to the other side of the coin. What about the messengers who bring us joy and comfort? How do we apply this same wisdom to our relationships with friends, family, and loved ones, so that our love does not become the chains of attachment? If those who hurt us are the coarse whetstones that sharpen the blade of our patience and wisdom, then our good friends, our kindred spirits, are like the gentle sun and rain that nourish the seed of enlightenment within us, helping it to sprout and grow. The spiritual path is not necessarily a solitary journey. The Buddha himself emphasized that having good friends on the path, known as Kalyana Mittata, or spiritual friendship, is one of the most important conditions, even the entirety, of the holy life. This is not about superficial friendships built on self-interest or fleeting pleasures. A spiritual friend is a companion who shares the same aspirations, the same values of truth, love, and wakefulness. They are the ones whose very presence is enough to inspire us, to remind us of our own best qualities. When we lose our way, they do not judge, but gently extend a hand to help us return to the right path. When we are discouraged and tired, they are the ones who sit beside us, listen, and give us strength. These friends act as a clear and encouraging mirror. While the mirror of an enemy reflects our ugly aspects, the weaknesses we need to transform, the mirror of a good friend reflects the beautiful qualities and the potential for enlightenment that are already inherent within us. When we doubt ourselves, they look at us and say, "I see your strength and your goodness." Their belief in us helps to strengthen our belief in ourselves. They are like a gardener who sees a precious lotus in a tiny seed and wholeheartedly nurtures and waters it so that the lotus can rise from the mud and bloom in fragrant beauty. The presence of such friends in our life is an immeasurable blessing. They are the messengers of encouragement, the everyday bodhisattvas, sent to confirm that we are not alone on this journey and that the path we are walking is a worthy one. However, it is precisely within these beautiful and loving relationships that a very subtle trap lies hidden, a kind of sweet poison that can turn love into chains. This is attachment, or upadana. When a person brings us so much joy, comfort, and a sense of security, it is very easy to become dependent on them. We begin to see them not as a fellow traveler, but as the source of our happiness. We unconsciously think, "Without this person, I cannot be happy." From there, love gradually becomes mixed with fear. Fear of being abandoned. Fear that they will change. Fear that one day they will no longer be by our side. We start to want to control, to possess, to have the other person always meet our needs and expectations. The relationship, once a space of freedom and support, unintentionally becomes a gilded cage. We imprison ourselves and the one we love inside it. The suffering that arises from attachment to good things is sometimes even more persistent and insidious than the pain caused by an enemy. History records the great transformation of King Ashoka of India, a testament to both the power of good friends and the danger of negative karma. Initially, King Ashoka was known as Chandashoka Ashoka the Fierce. He was an extremely warlike king who conquered and expanded his empire with the sword and with bloodshed. The culmination was the war to conquer the state of Kalinga, a battle so bloody that hundreds of thousands were killed and wounded. After the victory, as King Ashoka surveyed the battlefield, seeing the scenes of countless dead bodies, hearing the cries of wives who had lost their husbands and children who had lost their fathers, an overwhelming remorse and disgust arose within him. Power and victory suddenly became meaningless in the face of the ocean of suffering he himself had caused. In that very moment of crisis and despair, destiny led him to encounter Buddhist monks. They did not condemn or criticize him. Instead, they showed him another path, a path of non-violence, of love, and of transformation. It was these spiritual friends, with the peace and compassion radiating from their very lives, who became a lighthouse for the king who was lost in the darkness of his remorse. They helped him realize that the greatest power is not the power to conquer the world outside, but the power to conquer one's own mind. Thanks to the guidance and companionship of these spiritual friends, Ashoka the Fierce died, and in his place was born Dhammashoka Ashoka of the righteous Dharma. He dedicated the rest of his life to ruling with kindness, building hospitals and schools, protecting animals, and sending delegations to spread the Buddha's message of peace everywhere. This story shows that a few good friends, appearing at the right time, can be the catalyst for a great transformation, helping us to turn even the worst karma of the past into a force for service in the future. So how can we enjoy the gift of good relationships without falling into the trap of attachment? The antidote to clinging is the practice of gratitude. Instead of a possessive attitude, "You are mine, I need you," we cultivate an attitude of gratitude. "I am so lucky to have you in my life right now. Thank you for all that you bring." Gratitude acknowledges the gift without claiming ownership. It honors the beauty of the present moment in the relationship, with a clear awareness of its impermanence. We love and appreciate their presence today, while also being ready to accept that tomorrow things may be different. Love then becomes light, free from the burden of expectation and fear. It becomes a dance of two free souls, supporting each other on the journey, rather than two people leaning on each other for fear of falling. This practice of loving with gratitude and without clinging is essential for all supportive relationships. But where is this practice tested most intensely? It is often within our most intimate bonds, in the realm of romantic love, where the lines between selfless care and selfish attachment can become perilously blurred. How do we navigate this beautiful yet treacherous landscape? This leads us to explore the nature of love without chains. In all of our relationships, there is perhaps no space where happiness and suffering manifest as intensely and intimately as in romantic love. Love can lift us to the peaks of bliss, giving us the feeling of being understood and connected in the deepest way. But it can also plunge us into the abyss of jealousy, fear, and utter despair. It is a double-edged sword, and whether it heals or harms us depends entirely on how we hold it. Buddhist wisdom does not deny the beauty of love, but it points to a crucial distinction: the difference between love that comes from selfish attachment, known in Sanskrit as tanha or I, and love that comes from understanding and an open heart, expressed through the four immeasurables: loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. Let us look deeply together at the nature of clinging love, because this is the kind of love that most of us have experienced. This love is born from a feeling of inner lack, an emptiness within the ego. Because we feel incomplete, we search for another person in the hope that they will fill that void, that they will complete us. This love is essentially a transaction. It always comes with unspoken conditions. I love you if you make me happy. I love you because you give me a sense of confidence. It is demanding. It expects the other person to behave in a certain way to satisfy our needs. It is possessive. You are mine, I am yours. Behind the words and actions of clinging love, there is always an undercurrent of fear. We fear abandonment. We fear no longer being loved. We fear the other person will change. We fear loneliness. And it is this fear that gives birth to control, jealousy, suspicion, and the attempt to change the other person to fit our ideal. We unintentionally turn the one we love into an object, a means to serve the security of our illusory ego. This is a love that cannot bring lasting peace because it is built on an unreal foundation. The illusion of a deficient self that needs something external to be whole. To illustrate these two kinds of love, imagine a simple story. A person is walking in a garden and sees an incredibly beautiful rose. The first person, representing clinging love, immediately has the thought, "I must have this flower. It is so beautiful, I want it for my own." So, they reach out, pluck the flower from its stem, take it home, and place it in a beautiful vase. For a day or two, the flower's presence brings them joy. But cut off from its life source, from the earth, the sun, and the air, the flower quickly withers and dies. Its beauty vanishes, and eventually, they have to throw it in the trash. The desire to possess has destroyed the very thing it loved. Now, imagine a second person, representing true love, who also sees the same flower. This person's heart also fills with joy and admiration for its beauty. But their thought is different. This flower is so wonderful. I wish for it to continue being this beautiful. So, they do not pluck the flower. Instead, they come back every day to admire it. They might water the plant, protect it from pests. They love the flower by cherishing its life and its freedom, by supporting it to be itself, right where it belongs. This is the love that nurtures, the love that gives life, not the love that possesses. So how can we practice loving the flower without plucking it in our own relationships? The answer lies in cultivating the four immeasurables, the four qualities of true love. The first is loving kindness, metta, as we have discussed, which is the wish for the other person to be happy, a true and lasting happiness, independent of our own. Do you genuinely feel happy when your partner finds joy in their own hobbies, with their own friends? Or are you only happy when their happiness includes you? The second is compassion, karuna, which is the ability to be present with your loved one when they are suffering. Not to judge, not to rush to offer solutions, but to create a space of acceptance and listening so they can safely reveal their pain and vulnerabilities. Can you embrace their imperfections and failures with an empathetic heart? The third is sympathetic joy, mudita, which is the pure and unselfish joy in the success and happiness of the other. This is the antidote to jealousy and comparison. When your partner achieves something, do you genuinely rejoice for them? Or does a part of you feel threatened, feel diminished in comparison? Cultivating sympathetic joy is learning to shine together, not competing for the light. And finally, embracing and balancing all three is equanimity, upekkha. Equanimity in love is not indifference or coldness. It is the wisdom to love someone while still respecting them as a completely separate and free individual, not as an extension of your ego. It is the ability to give the other person the space to be who they are, to grow in their own way. It is the understanding that two people are like two rivers flowing side by side. There are stretches where the two rivers merge into one, but there are also stretches where they flow in their own currents, yet always heading toward the same ocean. Equanimity is letting go of the need to control. It is trusting the other person and the relationship itself. It is this non-attachment that creates the space for love to breathe, to grow in a healthy and sustainable way. In that case, a relationship is no longer a place where two incomplete halves come together to make a whole. Instead, it becomes a sacred space where two whole individuals choose to walk together, using their interactions, their collisions, their love, and even their suffering as a dojo for spiritual practice. They help each other see their egos, practice patience, compassion, and letting go. The relationship becomes a shared path of awakening. Whether we are dealing with a difficult person, a dear friend, or an intimate partner, we see that the quality of our relationships depends entirely on the quality of our own mind. But how do we maintain this wisdom amidst the chaos of daily life, in the heat of a conversation, or in a moment of emotional reaction? The key that unlocks our ability to apply all these insights in real time is the practice of mindful presence. We have now journeyed together through a great landscape of understanding. We have seen why we are connected in the web of interbeing and how karma operates. We have explored what the nature of reality is through impermanence and no self, and we have cultivated the qualities of the heart through loving kindness and compassion. These are precious jewels, the map to a peaceful existence. But a practical question remains. How can we use this map when we are in the middle of a storm, in the heat of a fierce argument, or when we are drowning in the sorrow of loss? The key to turning theory into lived experience, to transforming understanding into true liberation, lies in an energy called mindfulness, or sati in the Pali language. Mindfulness, in its simplest form, is the art of being present. It is the ability to bring the mind, which tends to wander into the past or worry about the future, back into unity with the body in this very moment, with an attitude of non-judgment. It is the energy of wakefulness, helping us to know clearly what is truly happening, both within and outside of us. Most of the time, we live in a state that psychologists call autopilot. When we talk with someone, especially someone we know well, we are often not really there. Our body may be sitting across from them, but our mind is elsewhere. We might be busy preparing our next response in order to win the argument. We might be rummaging through memories of their past mistakes to reinforce our point. Or we might be lost in silent judgment. Why are they using that tone of voice? I don't like what they're wearing. In this fragmented state of mind, we are not truly listening. We are just waiting for our turn to speak. We are not truly seeing the other person. We are only seeing our mental image of them through the filter of our prejudices and habits. It is this absence that is the source of countless misunderstandings, conflicts, and hurts in our relationships. In contrast, mindfulness invites us to truly be present. When you are with someone, be truly with them. One of the most powerful mindfulness practices is deep listening, as we've mentioned. But now let's look at it from the practitioner's point of view. When the other person is speaking, try to make listening your sole object of meditation. Bring your full attention to their words. Listen to each word. Feel the intonation, the rhythm of their voice. Notice their body language, the pauses between sentences. When you notice your mind starting to wander, what am I going to say next? Oh, this reminds me of. Gently, without any self-recrimination, bring your attention back to the sound of the other person's voice. Listening in this way is a priceless gift you can offer another person. It sends a message more powerful than any words. You are important. What you are saying is important. Right now, you are the most important thing to me. Simultaneously with listening to others, mindfulness is also the ability to observe our own inner weather. During an interaction, countless emotions will arise within us like clouds in the sky. Perhaps a word from the other person gives rise to a cloud of anger. Their smile might bring a cloud of joy. Their silence might create a fog of confusion. Normally, we identify with these clouds. When the cloud of anger appears, we become the anger. We speak and act from the very center of that storm, often causing damage that we later regret. But with mindfulness, we learn to be the sky, not the clouds. We take a step back and observe. Ah, a feeling of anger is arising in my body. I feel heat in my chest. My fists are clenching. We recognize the presence of the anger. We acknowledge it, but we are not swept away by it. We allow it to be itself, like a cloud, knowing that because it is impermanent, it will eventually pass if we do not feed it with more judgmental thoughts. It is in this non-judgmental observation that something magical happens. A small space appears. It is the space between the stimulus, the other person's words or actions, and our response. The psychologist Viktor Frankl, a survivor of the Nazi concentration camps, said something immortal. Between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Mindfulness is the tool that helps us find and expand that precious space. Instead of reacting automatically like a puppet on a string pulled by our emotions, we gain a few seconds to choose. We can choose silence. We can choose to take a deep breath. We can choose to reply with a word that comes from understanding and compassion, instead of from anger. It is this ability to choose that is the foundation of freedom and maturity in relationships. The Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh often used the example of drinking tea to teach about mindfulness. He said, "When you drink a cup of tea, truly drink the tea. Don't drink your worries, your plans, or your regrets. Just drink the tea. Feel the warmth of the cup in your hands. See the clear color of the tea. Bring it to your nose and smell the subtle fragrance. And when you drink, be fully aware of the warm liquid flowing into your body." When you can drink tea in that way, the cup of tea becomes incredibly real, and you also become incredibly real. The art of presence is exactly the same. When you are with a person, just be with that person. Don't be with your thoughts about them. Offer them the most precious gift you have, your full presence. Your presence, your non-judgmental listening, is more valuable than any material gift or advice you could ever give. Thus, mindfulness is not a complex technique or a distant state. It is the golden thread that ties all the other jewels of wisdom together. It is the energy of being awake to our life as it is happening. And as we practice mindfulness, as our attention becomes sharper, we begin to see more clearly the subtle workings of our own mind. In particular, we begin to notice the constant stream of stories, labels, and prejudices that we ceaselessly weave and project onto others. This clear seeing, born from mindfulness, will illuminate these fictional stories. What are they, and how can we learn to drop them? This is the next step on our journey of liberation. When the energy of mindfulness is sustained, when we begin to observe our lives more carefully, we discover an astonishing and somewhat shocking truth. We rarely interact with real, flesh and blood people. Instead, most of the time, we are interacting with ghosts, with mental images, with stories that our own minds have created about them. When you meet your partner at the end of the day, you are not really meeting the person who is present before you. You are meeting a collection of memories of all your past arguments, your expectations of what they should be doing, and your fears about the relationship. When your boss walks into the room, you are not meeting a simple boss. You are meeting the difficult boss who didn't give me a raise last year, or the boss who seems unhappy with my work. We live in a world of stories, and we react to those stories, not to reality. This is the source of countless unnecessary sufferings and misunderstanding. Our mind is a relentless story-making machine. It operates automatically and incredibly fast. A friend doesn't reply to your text message immediately. The story machine kicks in. He must be angry with me. What did I do wrong? Or maybe he doesn't value this friendship anymore. A colleague gives you a strange look. The story flows out. They must be talking about me behind my back. I knew it. You can't trust anyone here. These stories, a mixture of a few real facts and a great deal of interpretation, assumption, and unconscious fear, feel very true. We believe them unconditionally. And then, we act and speak based on these fictional stories. We reply to the text message with a sulky tone. We treat the colleague coldly. We have created a negative reality just by the power of the stories we've invented, and then we complain about why our lives have so many problems. When we believe these stories for long enough, they solidify into labels that we stick on other people. The lazy husband, the critical mother-in-law, the unreliable friend. These labels create a prison. First, they imprison the other person. Once you have labeled your husband as lazy, you are no longer able to see the times when he is diligent. Every action of his will be interpreted through the filter of laziness. If he cleans the house, you'll think he must have done something wrong, that's why he's doing this. He has no chance to change in your eyes, because you are no longer looking at him. You are only looking at the label you created. At the same time, that prison also incarcerates you. Because you believe your husband is always lazy, you will always react to him with the same old script, nagging, criticizing, getting annoyed. You are both stuck in a play of your own making, reenacting the same roles, speaking the same lines, and getting the same painful result. There is a famous Zen story that perfectly illustrates the carrying of these mental burdens. It tells of two monks, one senior and one junior, who were on a pilgrimage. They came to a river with a rather strong current. On the bank stood a beautiful young woman in fine clothes, hesitating, not knowing how to cross without getting her dress wet. According to the monk's vows, they were forbidden from touching women. The young monk, seeing her, turned his face away, kept his distance, perhaps silently judging her in his mind. But the old monk, without any hesitation, approached her, bent down, lifted the woman onto his shoulders, waded across the river, and gently set her down on the other side. Having done so, he said not a word and continued his journey. The young monk was utterly astonished and angry. For hours afterward, as the two of them walked on, the young monk's mind churned with resentful stories. How could he do that? What a disgrace! He has broken our sacred vows. How dare he do such a thing? His anger and judgment grew, becoming an unbearable burden. Finally, as evening approached, he could stand it no longer, blocked the old monk's path, and challenged him. Why did you touch that woman at the river? We are forbidden to do that. The old monk looked at his disciple, a compassionate smile appearing on his face, and he replied gently, I left that woman at the river hours ago. Why are you still carrying her? This story clearly shows the difference between dealing with reality and being trapped in a story about reality. The old monk dealt with the situation as it was a person in need of help. He acted from compassion, and when it was over, he let it go completely. His mind was empty and light. The young monk, though his body never touched the woman, his mind had been carrying her for the entire journey. He carried his judgment, his anger, his rigid rules. His burden came not from the woman, but from the story he had created in his own head. So how can we put these burdens down? The antidote is to practice beginner's mind. It is a conscious effort to see everyone, every situation, as if for the first time. Try to meet your partner today without carrying the weight of yesterday's argument. Try to listen to your colleague's opinion without being biased by your prejudice against them. This requires us to let go of something the ego loves very much, the need to be right. In a conflict, stop for a second and ask yourself a sincere question. What do I truly want right now? Do I want to prove that I am right and the other person is wrong? Or do I want peace? Often, we cannot have both, and when we look deeply, we will see that peace is far more precious than winning an argument. Our freedom lies in the ability to recognize the difference between reality as it is happening and the stories we tell ourselves about it. By practicing mindfulness, we can catch the mind's storytelling machine in the act. We can smile at it and say, "Ah, another story," and then we can choose not to believe it. We can choose to return to the reality of this moment. As we begin to let go of the stories we tell about others, we must inevitably confront the main character who is always present in every drama, ourselves. And the most common, most painful role we often assign ourselves is that of the victim. How can we step out of this disempowering role and reclaim our inner freedom? This requires us to explore the end of victimhood. Of all the stories our mind weaves, perhaps none is as compelling and as dangerous as the role of the victim. When we put on this costume, we see the world through a special lens. Everything seems to be happening to us. Other people are intentionally doing things against us. We become the main character in a tragic film, a passive recipient of injustice and pain inflicted by the outside world. Why is this happening to me? What did I do to deserve this? No one understands me. These are the familiar lines of this role. At first glance, the victim role seems to offer some comfort. It can attract sympathy from others. It allows us to avoid taking responsibility for our circumstances. But behind that fleeting comfort is an incredibly high price. It robs us of our most precious assets, our inner strength and our ability to change. When we believe we are a victim, we have handed the keys to our happiness to others and locked ourselves in a prison of powerlessness. The essence of the victim mentality is blame. The source of our suffering is always placed out there. I am sad because she said that. I am stressed because my job is too demanding. My unhappy childhood is because of my parents. When we blame, we implicitly affirm that we have no control over our own emotions. Our feelings are like a switch, and other people have the power to turn it on or off whenever they please. If our happiness depends on other people changing, on them treating us well, on them apologizing to us, then we will have to wait in vain. Because the one thing in the world we cannot control is the actions and thoughts of others. To live with a victim mentality is to live a life of waiting for the world to change so that we can be at peace. It is a wait that will never end. In the Buddhist scriptures, there is a powerful parable of the two arrows, which helps us to see this mechanism of self-inflicted suffering clearly. The Buddha asked his disciples, monks, if a person is struck by an arrow, do they feel pain? The disciples replied, Venerable Sir, yes, they feel great pain. The Buddha asked again, and if, after that, they are struck by a second arrow in the exact same wound, does the pain not increase tenfold? The disciples agreed, Venerable Sir, it certainly would. The pain would be unbearable. At this point, the Buddha explained patiently. Just so, in life, we cannot always avoid being struck by the first arrow. Painful, undesirable events happen naturally in human existence. A hurtful word, a loss, an illness, a failure. This is the unavoidable suffering of life. He then continued, but an unwise person, after being struck by the first arrow, shoots a second arrow, and a third, and many more, into themselves. This second arrow is our reaction to the initial pain. It is the story we tell ourselves. Why me? This is so unfair. I don't deserve this. Life is terrible. It is the complaining, the resentment, the self-pity, the anger, and the resistance to reality. The Buddha taught that this second arrow is entirely optional. And it is this arrow, not the first, that causes the deepest and most long-lasting suffering. The wise person, when struck by the first arrow, acknowledges the pain. There is a painful feeling present, but they do not shoot the second arrow into themselves. They do not waste energy complaining, but use that energy to heal the wound. In relationships, this happens constantly. The other person's hurtful action or word is the first arrow. We cannot control that. but the story we carry with us, repeating it in our heads for hours, for days. How could he say that to me? He is a terrible person. I will never forgive this. That is us repeatedly shooting the second, third, and fourth arrows into ourselves. We are perpetuating and worsening our own wound. So, how do we pull out the second arrow and abandon the victim role? It begins with a fundamental shift in the questions we ask. This is an act that requires courage and honesty with oneself. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" try asking, "What lesson can I learn from this situation?" Instead of asking, "Why are they so awful?" ask, "What is this situation revealing about my own attachments and emotional triggers?" This shift moves the focus from blaming the outside to learning from the inside. It does not mean you take the blame for the first arrow. It means you take 100% responsibility for your reaction, for the second arrow. This is a crucial distinction. Taking responsibility is not the same as taking the blame. Taking responsibility is taking back your power. You declare that, while I cannot control your actions, I have complete control over how I respond to them. My feelings are my own, and I choose not to let them be controlled by your actions. Try changing your language as well. Instead of saying, "You made me furious," try saying, "When you said that, I felt a strong surge of anger arise within me." This small shift has extraordinary power. It acknowledges your feeling without blaming the other person, and it returns the locus of control to you. Stepping out of the victim role is one of the most powerful acts of liberation you can do for yourself. It is the moment you stop being a leaf blown about by the wind and become a stable mountain. The wind can still blow, the storm can still rage around you, but you are no longer shaken. You realize that while you do not have the power to change the external world, you have total power to master your inner world. And true peace, unshakable happiness, can only be found there. When we are no longer a victim seeking happiness from the outside, when we stop demanding that others make us happy, something magical happens. We discover the ability to generate joy from within. And even more wonderfully, when we no longer feel a sense of lack, we become capable of feeling joy for the happiness of others, without any sense of competition or jealousy. This is the gateway to one of the most sublime and beautiful qualities of the heart, sympathetic joy, or mudita. Once we have renounced the role of the victim, we no longer search for happiness from the outside. This opens up a vast space in our soul, allowing a new kind of joy, one that is expansive and limitless, to blossom. This is the joy of mudita. After we have stopped blaming others for our suffering and have taken back our full inner power, a profound change takes place. We no longer see the world as a place full of threats and injustice. Our heart, no longer busy with defense and resentment, begins to soften and open. From this newfound space, we discover a third source of happiness, a noble quality in the four immeasurables, which is H9, or mudita. Mudita is often translated as sympathetic joy or appreciative joy. It is the ability to feel sincere and unselfish joy in the good fortune, success, and happiness of others. This is one of the most beautiful practices, but also one of the greatest challenges to our ego. Let us look honestly into our own hearts. In our highly competitive culture, happiness is often seen as a zero-sum game. For me to win, someone else has to lose. When we hear that a friend has been promoted, a colleague has bought a new house, or a relative is in a happy relationship, what is often our first reaction? On the outside, we may offer congratulations, but inside, there might be a sting of pain, a subtle comparison, a hint of jealousy creeping in. Why them and not me? What do they have that I don't? This feeling is born from a mistaken belief, a scarcity mindset, which assumes that happiness, success, and good fortune are limited resources. If someone else takes a piece, our piece will be smaller. This mindset is a silent poison that destroys relationships and contaminates our inner peace. Envy is a prison we build for ourselves, a prison with bars, made of comparison, and the jailer is our own ego, which always feels a sense of lack. Sympathetic joy, mudita, is the key to breaking out of that prison. It is the antidote to envy. It comes from an abundance mindset, a recognition that happiness and joy are infinite. Someone else's happiness does not take anything away from you. The practice of mudita is a conscious redirection of our attention. When you hear good news about someone, instead of letting the habit of comparison run on autopilot, pause for a moment. Intentionally bring your attention to their joy. Try to truly imagine the happiness they are feeling. And then, silently congratulate them from the bottom of your heart. This is so wonderful for them. May their happiness continue and grow. Feel their joy as if it were your own. At first, this may not be easy, but be patient. As you practice this, something miraculous will happen. You will realize that your capacity for happiness expands without limit. If your happiness depends only on good things happening to you personally, your chances for happiness will be rare. But if you can feel joy for the good fortune of everyone, then your opportunities for happiness become infinite. You can find joy in a stranger's wedding photo. You can smile with delight at the laughter of a child in the park. You can feel a warmth in your heart when you hear that an old friend has fulfilled their dream. The entire world suddenly becomes an endless source of joy for you. You no longer have to wait for good things to happen to you alone. You can borrow joy from everywhere. This practice will purify your mind of one of its most corrosive emotions, envy. It makes your relationships lighter, more authentic, and more supportive. Yet you become a person others want to be around, because they feel that you genuinely celebrate their success, rather than secretly competing with them. To illustrate the spreading power of sympathetic joy, think of the image of a candle. Imagine a vast, dark room. In the middle of the room, a single candle is burning. Its light is beautiful, but also lonely and limited. That is your own personal happiness. Now imagine hundreds, thousands of other unlit candles being brought into the room. If your candle, your heart, is governed by envy, it would think, I don't want these other candles to be lit. Their light might outshine mine. And the room remains dark. But if your candle is governed by mudita, what does it do? It happily leans over and touches its flame to the wick of the candle next to it. And what is the miracle? When it lights another candle, does its own flame diminish? Absolutely not. Its flame remains just as bright as before, but now the room has become brighter. As it continues to light the second, the third, and thousands of other candles, its own flame is not diminished in the slightest, but the entire room is now flooded with light and warmth. Our joy is like the flame of that candle. Sharing joy and rejoicing in the joy of others does not take anything away from us. It only multiplies the total amount of joy in the world and in our own experience. When you can truly be happy for another's happiness, you are lighting a new candle in the universe, and that light will also return to warm you. The practice of mudita frees us from the narrow prison of the ego. It teaches us that happiness is not a competition, but a symphony. Each person is a musical note. When one note rings out clearly and beautifully, it does not make the other notes worse. It makes the entire symphony more beautiful. We are all connected in this symphony of life. Your joy is my joy, and my joy is your joy. Sympathetic joy brings a deep peace and contentment. However, life is not always about success and good fortune. After joy, there may be sorrow. After praise, there may be blame. How can we keep our hearts balanced, not getting too carried away by success, nor too bogged down by failure? How can we love completely while remaining stable in the face of the ups and downs of life and relationships? This leads us to the final, all-encompassing, and most noble quality of the four immeasurables. This is equanimity, or upekkha. Having bathed in sympathetic joy, we will now explore the final quality, the one that embraces and provides the foundation for the other three. This is the mountain of stability, the ocean of equanimity. We have learned to cultivate loving kindness to warm the heart, compassion to soothe suffering, and sympathetic joy to share in happiness. These are three incredibly positive and beautiful energies. But without a fourth element to balance and protect them, even these noble qualities can become a source of affliction. Love, metta, can turn into blind attachment. Compassion, karuna, can drown us in exhaustion and despair. Joy, mudita, can become frivolous excitement that loses touch with reality. That fourth element, the firm ground for all of them, is upekkha, or equanimity. The word equanimity here is often misunderstood as indifference, coldness, or apathy. But that is a harmful misunderstanding. Equanimity is not about not caring. On the contrary, it is a state of the deepest caring, but one that comes from a place of wisdom, an unshakable peace, a heart as vast as the sky, allowing all clouds of weather to pass through without being affected by them. In our daily lives, our minds are constantly buffeted by the 8 winds of the world, or the Bat Feng. These 8 winds always blow in opposing pairs. The first pair is gain and loss. When we get what we want, a new job, a favorite item, we feel happy, ecstatic. When we lose them, we feel pain and despair. The second pair is praise and blame. When we are praised by others, our ego inflates, we feel proud. When we are blamed or criticized, we feel hurt and angry. The third pair is fame and disrepute. When we gain a good reputation, status, and are admired by many, we feel important. When our reputation is damaged, when we are scorned by society, we feel shame and want to disappear. And the final pair is pleasure and pain, referring to the pleasant and unpleasant sensations of body and mind. The mind of an ordinary person is like a pendulum, constantly being pushed back and forth by these 8 winds, from the heights of excitement to the depths of despair. We do not have true peace because our happiness is completely dependent on these ever-changing external conditions. Equanimity is the practice of standing firm in the center, not being swayed by any of these winds. It is the ability to keep one's mind balanced, like a tightrope walker, not leaning to the left or to the right. This does not mean you no longer feel. When praised, you still know it is praise and can smile and say thank you, but you don't let it make you arrogant. When blamed, you still hear the criticism. You can consider it objectively, but you don't let it destroy your inner peace. You recognize everything coming and going, but you do not identify with it. To illustrate equanimity, imagine a great, ancient, towering mountain. That mountain has stood there for millions of years. It has witnessed countless storms and ferocious, howling winds. The wind can rip leaves from the trees on its slopes, can erode small rocks, and clouds can obscure its peak. But the mountain itself, its core, its vast, rocky substance, remains utterly still and unmoved. It does not fight against the wind. It simply allows the wind to blow around it. Its stability comes from being deeply rooted in the earth. Our minds can also be trained to become as stable as a mountain. The deep-rootedness of the mind is the profound understanding of interdependent origination, impermanence, and no-self. When we are truly rooted in this understanding, the 8 worldly winds can blow, but they no longer have the power to uproot our inner peace. In relationships, equanimity is an incredibly important and healing quality. It allows us to love someone completely without making them the source of our happiness or suffering. You can be with your partner when they are angry or sad. Listen to them with all your compassion, but you are not drowned by their emotions. You maintain your own stability, so you can be a peaceful anchor for them, instead of both of you being swept into an emotional vortex. Equanimity is also the ability to respect the freedom and individual path of another person. You can offer advice with all good intentions. You can help with all your ability, but afterwards, you must learn to let go of the outcome. You cannot control their choices. They must walk their own path and learn their own lessons. To love with equanimity means to trust in the other person's journey, even when it is not what you expect. This frees both you and them from the burden of control and expectation. Equanimity is the perfecting element of the 4 immeasurables. It keeps loving kindness from becoming selfish attachment. It keeps compassion from turning into despair or burnout, what is sometimes called idiot compassion. It keeps sympathetic joy from becoming frivolous excitement, disconnected from reality. Equanimity is like the earth, and loving kindness, compassion, and sympathetic joy are 3 beautiful trees that grow from it. Without the firm ground, those 3 trees cannot grow in a healthy and stable way. It is the all-encompassing wisdom, the vast perspective that sees everything in its proper context and in its impermanent flow. When you cultivate equanimity, you will find a peace that is not dependent on anything external. Others praise you. That's fine. Others blame you. That's also fine. You gain much. You lose much. These are just waves on the surface of the ocean. But you are the deep, profound stillness underneath. That is true freedom. Having now explored the four sublime states of the heart: loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity, we have a complete toolkit for navigating even the most intimate and challenging relationships. But what about the countless fleeting interactions that make up our daily lives? What about the brief encounters with strangers? How can this profound wisdom be applied to those messengers in passing? So far, we have spent much time exploring the significant relationships in our lives. Family, close friends, partners, and even our enemies. These are the mountains and deep valleys on the map of our consciousness. But the vast territory of daily life is not made up of these grand landscapes. It is woven from countless fleeting encounters, brief interactions with people we may never see again. The waiter in a coffee shop, the taxi driver, the cashier at the supermarket, or the pedestrian who passes us on the street. We tend to see these encounters as insignificant, to see these people as functions rather than as real human beings. We interact with the cashier function, the driver function, and completely overlook the truth that behind these roles is a person who also has joys, sorrows, hopes, and disappointments, just like us. The wisdom of mindfulness invites us to look again. It says that no encounter is meaningless. Every single interaction, no matter how small, is a precious opportunity to practice, to plant a wholesome seed, and to strengthen our connection to the web of life. Let's see the entire world as your monastery, your dojo. You don't need to sit on a cushion in a quiet room to practice. The real practice happens right in the midst of the bustling stream of life. The driver who cuts you off dangerously in traffic, instead of immediately getting angry and cursing, you can take a deep breath and see it as an opportunity to practice patience. The salesperson with a sour and tired expression, instead of feeling annoyed, you can look at them with the eyes of compassion and silently wish for their burdens to be lightened. The stranger who holds the door open for you, instead of walking through silently as if it were your due, you can look them in the eye and offer a sincere thank you, practicing gratitude and sharing a small moment of joy. Each of these moments is an exercise. They are the small reps for the soul. Just like going to the gym, you can't only lift the heaviest weights. It is the small and consistent exercises that build strong and enduring muscles. Similarly, practicing mindfulness, compassion, and patience in these small daily interactions will build a solid inner strength. Then, when a real challenge comes, a major conflict with a loved one, a loss, you will already have the strength to face it wisely. When viewed this way, not a single moment of the day is wasted. Everything is an opportunity. You will never know the power a small act of kindness can have. We don't know what kind of terrible day that waiter has had. Your sincere smile and word of thanks might be the only ray of light in their gloomy day. We don't know what worries the taxi driver is carrying about bills or the health of a loved one. Your acknowledgement of their existence as a human being, asking them a simple question, might bring an unexpected warmth. These actions cost us nothing, but for the recipient, they can make a huge difference. It's like planting a small seed in their field of consciousness and in our own. That seed, according to the law of interdependent origination, will sprout and spread in ways we can never foresee. It is a ripple of kindness dropped into the ocean of interconnectedness, helping to make this world a warmer place, even if just a little. There is a modern story told about a man who had decided he was going to end his life. He had lost everything: his job, his family, and all hope. He decided he would walk to a bridge and jump. On his way, he passed hundreds of people, but it seemed no one saw him. Everyone was in a hurry, glued to their phones, lost in their own worlds. This feeling of invisibility only strengthened his resolve. He thought, "See, my existence means nothing to anyone." As he neared the bridge, a woman walking toward him from the opposite direction, instead of looking away, looked directly into his eyes and smiled. It was not a polite social smile. It was a warm, genuine smile, a simple acknowledgement between two human beings. Just a brief moment. That woman probably forgot about the smile a few seconds after she passed. But for the man, it shook his entire world. For the first time that day, he felt seen. For the first time, he felt a connection, however fragile, to another human being. That feeling, that unexpected ray of light, was enough to make him pause. It broke the tragic story of invisibility he was telling himself. And he did not jump from the bridge that day. A smile, an act whose power the giver was completely unaware of, saved a human life. This story reminds us that there is no such thing as a small act of kindness. When we begin to pay attention to these fleeting encounters, we are practicing the remembrance of our shared humanity. Regardless of appearance, job, or circumstance, behind all the roles, we are all human. We all share a longing to be loved and a fear of being hurt. Every small interaction is an opportunity to reinforce this truth, to break down the illusion of separation. When we can see the human being in a stranger, it becomes easier to see the human being in an enemy. When we can offer a little kindness to someone we don't know, we are training the muscle of unconditional acceptance. And it is this very muscle that we will need for one of the most difficult and liberating acts in the spiritual life. What happens when the person who needs our acceptance is someone who has wronged us deeply? This brings us to the sacred challenge of forgiveness. Of all the burdens we place upon our own shoulders in life, perhaps none is heavier or more toxic than resentment. When someone hurts us deeply, our natural reaction is to get angry, to hold on to that pain as evidence of their wrongdoing. We think that by not forgiving, we are somehow punishing them, making them pay. But this is one of the most tragic illusions of the mind. Holding on to resentment is like grasping a burning coal and hoping the other person gets burned. What is the result? Only your own hand gets scorched, blistered, and pained, while the other person may be living their life, completely unaware or unconcerned about your suffering. Unforgiveness is a prison we build for ourselves, and we are both the prisoner and the jailer. Forgiveness, therefore, is not an act of weakness or a gift bestowed upon the one who hurt us. Forgiveness is an act of profound wisdom and self-compassion. It is the courageous act of putting down the hot coal to free ourselves from the constant burning. To be able to enter the space of forgiveness, we must first understand what forgiveness is not. This is incredibly important because much of our resistance to forgiving comes from these misunderstandings. First, forgiveness does not mean condoning or excusing the harmful act. A hurtful act is still a wrongful act. Forgiveness does not require you to say, "Oh, it's okay, it was no big deal." You have the right to clearly acknowledge that what happened was unacceptable. Second, forgiveness does not mean forgetting. Our memory has the function of recording experiences, so we can learn from them and protect ourselves in the future. Forgive but don't forget means that we remember the lesson from the experience, but we choose to release the emotional charge, the anger, bitterness, and resentment that is attached to that memory. Third, and this is most important, forgiveness does not necessarily mean reconciliation. You are under no obligation to let the person who hurt you back into your life, especially if they are still a source of harm. Forgiveness is a completely internal process. It happens in your heart, regardless of whether the other person apologizes, whether they change, or even whether they are still alive. You can forgive someone and decide never to see them again. Forgiveness is for you, so that you can move on with your life with lightness and peace. The process of forgiveness is a journey, not a one-time event. It requires patience and compassion. It begins by allowing yourself to feel the pain fully. Do not suppress it or pretend you are fine. Acknowledge the anger, the hurt, the sadness. Write it down, talk about it with a trusted friend, or simply sit still and feel it in your body with mindful attention. After allowing the pain to have a voice, the next step is to make a conscious decision. It is the decision that you no longer want to carry this burden. You repeat to yourself, again and again, "I choose peace instead of resentment. I choose to put down this hot coal for my own sake." And then, this process must also be applied to ourselves. Sometimes, the hardest person to forgive is ourselves. We torment ourselves over past mistakes, over foolish words or actions that hurt others. Practice compassion for the person you were in the past, a person who acted out of ignorance, fear, and their own suffering. Learn from the mistake, but do not sentence yourself to life in the prison of guilt. The foundation of true and deep forgiveness is wisdomous understanding. When we look at the person who hurt us through the lens of interdependent origination, karma, and no self, our perspective will change completely. we will see that their harmful act did not arise from an inherently evil nature, but was the result of countless causes and conditions, of negative seeds in their consciousness that may have been planted for generations. They acted from ignorance, from their own suffering. The story of the Buddha and his cousin Devadatta is the ultimate example of forgiveness born from wisdom. Devadatta, consumed by jealousy and ambition, tried many times to harm and even kill the Buddha. He incited an archer to shoot the Buddha. He rolled a large boulder down a hill to crush him, and he released a drunken elephant to attack him. But in the face of all these schemes, the Buddha never showed a trace of resentment. When the boulder came crashing down, only injuring his foot with a small splinter, he remained calm. When the ferocious elephant charged at him, he did not run. He stood still, radiating the energy of loving kindness, and the elephant knelt before him. The Buddha's reaction did not come from naivete. It came from a clear and profound seeing. He saw that Devadatta was being consumed by the flames of his own greed, hatred, and delusion. He saw that his cousin was the one who was suffering most. Therefore, instead of anger, his heart felt only compassion. He forgave Devadatta not after the fact, but in the very moment it was happening, because his understanding and love were immediate and unconditional. Forgiveness is the act of putting down the heaviest bag we have been carrying on our back for too long. It does not change the past, but it completely liberates our present and our future. It is the act of opening the door of our own heart's prison and walking out into the sun. When we forgive, we are tearing down a wall that separates me, the wronged, from the other, the wrongdoer. We acknowledge our shared humanity, our shared suffering, and as we continue to tear down these walls, as our hearts become more open through forgiveness, we begin to realize something even more wondrous. We begin to see that on the other side of the wall, the face we see looks remarkably like our own. This profound understanding is the gateway to one of the greatest insights, seeing yourself in others. The act of forgiveness helps us to tear down the wall of resentment, a wall built on the idea of me on this side and the one who harmed me on the other. But what happens when we use the light of wisdom to illuminate the very foundation of that wall, the very idea of a me that is separate from another? When we do that, we don't just tear down a wall, we realize that there was never really a wall there to begin with. This is one of the most profound and liberating insights on the spiritual path, the art of seeing yourself in others. On the surface, we look very different. We have different bodies, come from different families, hold different beliefs and opinions. It is these differences that create a rich and diverse world. But if we look deeper, much deeper, beneath the shell of form and concepts, we will touch a level of being where we are all exactly the same. Ask yourself, what is it that every living being, from the king in his palace to the beggar on the street, from the person you love most to the person you hate most, truly wants? The answer is incredibly simple. Everyone wants to be happy and to avoid suffering. This is the common denominator, the universal truth that connects us all. When you see someone chasing fame and fortune, you can see behind it a desire for security and happiness, a desire that you also have. When you see someone speaking angry, bitter words, you can look deeper and see the fear of not being respected, the pain of being misunderstood, feelings that you too have experienced. When our ego steps back, we begin to realize that people's external actions, however different and sometimes contradictory they may seem, are often just different methods, clumsy and sometimes mistaken strategies to achieve the same single goal, to be happy and to escape suffering. When we see this, the otherness of the other person begins to fade and empathy begins to arise. This insight becomes even more powerful when we apply it to those we consider enemies or people who act wrongly. Instead of just judging them in the present moment, try to see them as a past or future version of yourself. Look back at your own past with honesty. Have there been times when, out of ignorance, fear, or anger, you have said or done things you later regretted? Have there been times when you have unintentionally hurt others because you were so lost in your own pain? When you look at a person acting negatively, can you see the image of yourself in the past? This insight dissolves self-righteousness and moral superiority. It brings a deep humility, a recognition that if I had also experienced the exact same life conditions, the same wounds, and the same education as them, perhaps I would have acted just as they did. We are all products of countless causes and conditions, and none of us is perfect. To express this insight of interbeing and non-separation most profoundly, the Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh wrote a famous poem called Please Call Me by My True Names. In this poem, he identifies not only as a human being, but as all the opposing aspects of life. He says, "Please call me the dragonfly, and also call me the bird that eats the dragonfly. Please call me the frog swimming happily, and also call me the snake that silently devours the frog." He says, "Please call me the 12-year-old girl in Uganda with skin and bones, and also call me the arms merchant selling deadly weapons to Uganda." He says, "Please call me the refugee girl on a small boat who is raped by a sea pirate and throws herself into the sea, and also call me the pirate, a man whose heart is no longer capable of love." This is not just poetry. This is a great meditative insight. It is the recognition that the potential for all of this, the good and the evil, the perpetrator and the victim, creation and destruction, exists within each of us, within the soil of our own consciousness. It is only when we can embrace all of these opposites within ourselves that we can truly understand and connect with everyone. We are no longer standing on one side judging the other. We stand in the center and see that all are expressions of life, all are a part of ourselves. This deep seeing is the very soil from which great compassion, Mahakaruna, arises. Compassion is no longer the pity of me for another person who is suffering. It becomes the vibration of the whole of existence in the face of the pain of one of its parts. When a cell in your body is injured, your whole body feels it and tries to heal it. Similarly, when one living being suffers, the person with great compassion feels that pain as their own. This is the spirit of a bodhisattva, one who has vowed not to enter peaceful nirvana for themselves alone, until all beings, without exception, are liberated from suffering, because they understand deeply that as long as one being suffers, a part of themselves is still suffering. To harm another, in this great web of interbeing, is literally to harm oneself, and to help another is to heal oneself. In summary, seeing yourself in others is the culmination of our spiritual practice in relationships. The illusion of a separate, isolated self dissolves into the reality of a shared existence, a shared life. The boundary between inside and outside, between me and you, becomes blurry and unimportant. In that case, what does the nature of relationships become? It is no longer a negotiation between two egos, no longer a power struggle or an exchange of affection. So what does it become? When there are no boundaries, it becomes a flow, a flexible and responsive interaction. It becomes a dance, and that is the sacred dance of relationships. When the wall separating me and you melts away, when we realize that all living beings are sharing a common existence, a common desire for happiness, and a common suffering, then our entire perspective on relationships is radically redefined. What we once saw as a battlefield of conflicting egos, we now see as a dance floor. What we once saw as a chaotic jumble of random interactions, we now see as an intricate dance with its own rules and rhythm. Every person who enters our life is no longer an obstacle or a means to an end, but becomes a dance partner. Some partners are very skilled, leading us gently. Some partners are very clumsy, constantly stepping on our toes. But all of them are joining us in the great dance of interdependent origination. And when we understand this, we stop resisting or trying to control our dance partners. Instead, we learn to move flexibly, gracefully, and harmoniously with whoever is in front of us. With this new perspective, our notion of a place for spiritual practice also changes. Many people think that to find peace and enlightenment, they must escape to a quiet mountain or a secluded monastery, far from the noise and complexity of life. But the truth is, for a person who has wisdom, this very life is the greatest monastery. The office becomes your meditation hall. The difficult colleague is no longer an annoyance, but a strict meditation monitor, testing your patience and compassion every day. The kitchen in your home becomes your dojo, where you practice mindfulness while washing dishes, feeling the warm water, the sound of plates clinking, and transforming a boring chore into a living meditation. A crying child is not a nuisance, but a little Zen master teaching you about unconditional love and letting go of your own plans. A traffic jam is no longer a waste of time, but an unexpected opportunity for you to sit still, return to your breath, and practice accepting reality as it is. When we can see life in this way, then there is no place that is not a place of practice, and no moment that is not a moment of practice. Every daily interaction becomes a specific practice. A conversation with a friend is not just gossip. It becomes a meditation on deep listening and the practice of sympathetic joy. Are you truly listening to understand what they are sharing? Or are you just waiting for them to finish so you can tell your own story? When they share a success, do you genuinely feel happy for them? A disagreement with a partner is no longer a battle to see who is right and who is wrong. It becomes an opportunity for you to observe your own ego as it arises, to practice non-violent communication, and to look deeply into the other person's words to see the suffering and unmet needs behind them. When you receive criticism at work, it is an opportunity to practice equanimity, not letting the words of others define your self-worth, while still having the humility to consider if there is any truth in the feedback that you can learn from. Even a simple act like paying at the checkout counter becomes a practice. As you mindfully see the cashier as a human being, smile, and offer a little energy of kindness. When life is lived in this way, it is no longer a series of tasks to be completed, but a continuous flow of practice and mindfulness. In the history of Zen, there is a shining example of enlightenment in the midst of ordinary life, which is the story of Layman Pang, a lay practitioner who lived in the 8th century. He was not an ordained monk. He was a family man, with a wife and a daughter. But his entire family were people of deep spiritual attainment. They transformed their own home and their livelihood into a place of practice. There is a famous anecdote where someone asked Layman Pang about the supernatural powers and wonders of enlightenment. He replied with a line that has become immortal: "Supernatural power and wondrous activity. It is right here. Drawing water and chopping wood." This statement has a profound meaning. It means that enlightenment, the miracle of the path, is not found in some distant place. It is not an extraordinary miracle. It is found right in the ability to live the most ordinary life with a mind that is completely mindful and clear. To chop wood with a mind free of delusion, that is supernatural power. To carry water with a mind completely present in every step, that is wondrous activity. Their home was their monastery. Their family conversations were their Zen dialogues. The life of Layman Pang's family is a powerful testament that we do not need to renounce the world to find freedom from its suffering. The path of liberation lies right in the way we live, the way we work, and the way we interact with those around us. When we can live with this perspective, our attitude toward relationships changes from the root. We no longer endure difficult relationships. Instead, we begin to cherish them. We see every person, every situation, whether pleasant or unpleasant, as a gift, a lesson designed perfectly for our own growth. Life is no longer a problem to be solved, but a curriculum to be studied with gratitude. Every encounter is a step in a sacred dance. We no longer try to lead, but learn to flexibly follow the rhythm of reality. Where does this dance, this continuous practice, lead us? What is its ultimate fruit? It cultivates a quality within us, a peace that can no longer be shaken by external conditions. It forges a tranquility that comes not from a peaceful environment, but from a mind that has been tamed and has become peaceful. This leads us to the next profound truth. Peace is an inside job. For a long stretch of our lives, we often search for peace using a flawed strategy. We believe that peace is a state we will achieve when I will be peaceful when my partner stops doing that annoying thing. I will be peaceful when my boss starts appreciating my abilities. I will be peaceful when my children are better behaved. I will be peaceful when I have more money, a nicer house, a perfect vacation. We act like a gardener trying to clear away every single yellow leaf, every single pest, and force every flower to bloom exactly as we wish, hoping that when the garden becomes perfect, we will find tranquility. But this is a hopeless and incredibly tiring effort. Trying to find peace by rearranging the external world to our liking is like trying to level the entire ocean to stop the waves. It is a task that will never end. The truth is, the external world, by its very nature of impermanence and interdependent origination, will never be perfect. There will always be people who act in ways we don't like. There will always be undesirable circumstances that arise. People will always act according to their own karma, their own habits, and their own suffering, not according to the script that we write for them. The expectation and attempt to control others so that they will bring us peace is the very source of constant stress and conflict. It's like you are the director of a play in which none of the actors will follow your script. What would you feel? Powerless, angry, and exhausted. True wisdom lies in recognizing this truth and courageously resigning from that impossible job, the position of Chief Executive Officer of the universe. You must let go of the illusion that you can control the outside world. Freedom begins at the very moment you stop trying. So where is true peace to be found? If it is not outside, then it must surely be inside. Let us together imagine a mountain lake. On a windy day, the surface of the lake will be rippled, choppy, and the water will become murky. The reflection of the sky, the clouds, and the surrounding mountains will be distorted, no longer clear. An unwise person would stand on the shore and shout, commanding the wind to stop blowing, hoping the lake's surface will become calm again. That is a futile act. A wise person is different. They understand that the nature of the wind is to blow. Instead of trying to control the wind, they focus on the lake itself. They know that no matter how turbulent the surface is, deep down at the bottom of the lake, the water is always still and peaceful. Our mind is like that lake. The surface of the mind is our reactive thoughts and emotions, easily disturbed by the 8 winds of life. But the deep nature of our mind, what is sometimes called Buddha nature or original mind, is like the still water at the bottom of the lake. It is always there, peaceful, clear, and never disturbed. True peace, equanimity, is not the absence of wind. It is the ability to connect with and abide in the stillness of the deep water, even while the surface is agitated. And when our mind truly becomes still, something magical happens. It's as if the wind has stopped blowing on its own. The surface of the lake becomes as flat as a mirror, reflecting honestly the sky, the mountains, all things as they are, without a single distortion or judgment. When our mind is still, we see reality clearly. We see the true nature of our relationships, we see the suffering of others, and we see the workings of our own mind. And here is a beautiful paradox. When we stop trying to change others and instead focus on cultivating our own inner peace, our external relationships often improve on their own. Your inner state is not just something contained within you. It radiates outward, like an energy, an atmosphere. When you are tense, anxious, and insecure, the people around you, even if you don't say a word, can feel it. Your energy makes them defensive and reactive as well. But when you are truly peaceful, stable, and open, that quality also radiates out, like the gentle warmth from a fire. It creates a space of safety and calm. Others, when near you, will unconsciously feel more relaxed and peaceful themselves. Your non-reactivity has the power to de-escalate a conflict before it even begins. Your peace becomes a silent invitation, an opening for others to find peace within themselves. This is how you can truly help others. Not by telling them what to do, but by being the peace you wish to see in the world. Therefore, we must stop playing the role of a beggar, pleading for scraps of peace from the external world. We must realize that we are the kings and queens of our own inner kingdom. Peace is not something to be found. It is a quality to be cultivated, a garden to be tended to every day. It is an inside job. This entire journey we have taken, from understanding the web of life, observing karma, to cultivating a compassionate and equanimous heart, all of it has been preparing us to do this inner work. All the messengers who have entered our lives, the enemy, the friend, the lover, the stranger, they have all been teachers. All these lessons about impermanence, no self, compassion, forgiveness, they have all been tools. But what are they teaching us? What are these tools for? They all point toward a single, ultimate purpose, a final encounter, to awaken us to who we truly are. This leads us to the final and most important realization of this journey. The ultimate messenger is you. We have come on a long journey of discovery, a journey where all paths now seem to converge at a single central point. This is the time for us to realize a final and most liberating truth. We began this journey by looking outward. We examined the people who enter our lives, friends, enemies, lovers, strangers, and tried to understand who they are, what message they bring to us. We have seen them as mirrors, as teachers, as messengers sent by the universe. But after this long journey, through the understanding of interdependent origination, impermanence, no self, and the practice of the four immeasurables, it is now time for us to turn the lens back on ourselves, 180 degrees. The final and most profound insight is this. The entire outward journey was, from the very beginning, always a journey deep inside ourselves. All those external messengers, no matter how important, were merely catalysts. They were like fingers pointing at the moon. If we keep analyzing the finger, we will never see the moon. And that moon, the truth they are pointing to, is our own enlightened nature, the Buddha, the teacher that resides within you. The difficult colleague did not teach you patience. They simply created a circumstance for the quality of patience, or the lack thereof, that was already within you to be revealed. The loving partner did not give you happiness. They were just the right condition that helped the capacity for happiness, which is a part of your mind, to be awakened. The universe, through countless living beings, is constantly holding up mirrors for us to see ourselves. Every person we meet is just reflecting a certain angle of our own consciousness that we had never recognized. When we understand this, we will stop searching for answers or salvation from the outside. We will begin to listen to the voice of the teacher within, who has always been there, patiently waiting for us to return. The Zen story of the flower sermon is a perfect expression of this truth. It is said that one day at Vulture Peak, the Buddha was sitting among a great assembly of monks, bodhisattvas, and celestial beings, all silently waiting for him to deliver a sublime Dharma talk. But instead of speaking, the Buddha silently held up a single lotus flower. The entire assembly was silent. No one understood his meaning. They were expecting a sermon, concepts, doctrines. Their minds were directed outward, trying to analyze the flower, searching for a hidden meaning in it. But at that moment, in the whole assembly, only one disciple, the elder Mahakasyapa, looked at the flower and suddenly understood. He did not analyze. He directly perceived the truth the Buddha was pointing to, and a silent, serene, and knowing smile blossomed on his face. The Buddha saw that smile and declared, "I have the treasury of the true Dharma, the wondrous mind of nirvana, the true form of the formless, the subtle Dharma gate that does not rest on words or letters, but is a special transmission outside the scriptures. I now entrust this to Mahakasyapa." This transmission was not the giving of an object. It was the transmission of mind seal, the confirmation of an insight from heart to heart. The lesson was not in the flower. The flower, the external world, was just the finger. The lesson was in Mahakasyapa's own seeing, a seeing that arose from the stillness and clarity of his own mind. We are all Mahakasyapa, and life, in every single moment, is holding up countless flowers before you say word. A smile, a falling leaf, an event. The question is, are we busy analyzing the flower, or are we turning inward to listen to the understanding from our own heart? Are we waiting for a lecture from the outside, or are we ready to smile for ourselves? When we realize that the ultimate teacher lies within, we also realize something equally important. We are not just the receiver of messages. In this great web of interbeing, we are also the messengers. Each of us is a jewel in Indra's net, not only reflecting the light from other jewels, but also constantly radiating our own light, creating reflections in all the other jewels. Until now, we have focused on reading the messages that others bring to us. Now, it is time for us to take responsibility for the messages that we ourselves are sending out. Every action you take, every word you speak, even every thought that arises in your mind, is a message you are broadcasting to the universe. It is a seed you are planting in the soil of collective consciousness. It is a ripple you are creating in the ocean of life. This realization brings a deep sense of responsibility, but at the same time, and incredible empowerment. It means you are no longer a passive audience member in the play of life. You are an author, a director, a lead actor. Every moment is a choice. What will you choose to be a messenger for? Will you continue to be a messenger for your old habits, for fear, for judgment, for blame? Or will you choose to be a messenger for your awakened nature, for peace, for understanding, for compassion? When you smile at the cashier, you are a messenger of joy. When you listen to a suffering friend, you are a messenger of compassion. When you maintain your calm in a conflict, you are a messenger of peace. Ultimately, the insight that the ultimate messenger is you dissolves all remaining distinctions. There is no longer a separate sender, receiver, and message. All are one. You are your own teacher. You are also the teacher of others. You are the one learning the lesson, and you are also the lesson itself. The entire journey of discovering the people who enter our lives has finally led to the discovery of ourselves and our role in the universe. The goal is not to understand everyone else. The goal is, through them, to understand ourselves, and then, from that understanding, to become a source of healing and awakening energy for the world. This journey of awareness has taken us from confusion to clarity, from the darkness of ignorance to the light of wisdom. Now is the time for us to contemplate the entire path we have traveled and to distill the most essential messages that this journey wishes to impart. We have traveled a long road together, a journey deep into the heart of our relationships and deep into the heart of ourselves. We began with a feeling of confusion and perhaps loneliness, seeing life as a series of random and chaotic encounters. But then, step by step, we lit the torch of wisdom together. We have seen ourselves as an inseparable part of the great web of interbeing, have heard the echoes of karma in our daily interactions, have learned to flow with the river of impermanence instead of resisting it, and have courageously let go of the illusion of a separate self. We have discovered how to turn enemies into teachers, how to love without chains, how to find freedom in forgiveness, and finally, to realize that we ourselves are the most important messenger. From being a victim of circumstance, we have gradually become a co-creator of our own reality. The core message that this entire journey wishes to convey to you is simple, yet profound. People do not enter your life by chance. Every single person you meet, from the one you love the most to the one who hurts you the most, is a sacred messenger. They are sent by the very laws of the universe, not to make you happy or sad, but to make you awake. They are mirrors placed before you to reflect precisely those places where you need to heal, those corners where you need to love, and those lessons you need to graduate from. True peace is not found in being able to arrange a perfect cast of actors for the play of your life. It is not found on the outside. Peace is an inner quality. It is the ability to keep your mind still and your heart open, regardless of who your dance partner is, and regardless of whether the music of life is joyful or melancholic. Now, as this audio is about to end, your real journey is just beginning. You are no longer a helpless leaf blown about by the wind. You are a gardener, an artist, a person with the power to choose. With every breath, every encounter, you have a new opportunity to practice what you have understood. You have the chance to plant a seed of kindness, to listen with your whole heart, to forgive a mistake, and to see yourself in the eyes of another. The path of liberation is not far away. It is right here, in the very way you interact with the world. So, carry this understanding with you into your life. And with the very next person you meet, whether a loved one or a stranger, silently ask yourself this question: what message is this messenger bringing to me? Listen for the answer not with your ears, but with your entire open heart.